What is he talking about there? He talks, he says that this is like a hashma, or like this embarrassment that a person has, and this obligation that they have to praise others. What does he mean by that? Right? So if you hear five, six, seven, eight people talking about how great somebody is, all of a sudden, if I don't feel that, what happens? Well, I feel shy, right? I feel shy to praise that, and there are certain individuals that, we might enter a circle and they're like, yeah, he's so amazing, he's so great, like, look at his explanation in the Quran, it's so unique, it's so interesting, and you're like, well, this isn't really that, what I mean, you're thinking in your heart, this isn't that impressive, but because everybody else is saying it, what happens? We tend to lose confidence in ourselves, right? And we lose trust in ourselves and thinking that, okay, well, if so many people are saying it, how is it possible that right, I'm wrong, or that I'm missing something? So he goes on to say that the majority of people, they get caught up in this, right? They get caught up in this idea that they want to be praised, or they avoid being criticized. And we talked about what is the best way to actually determine if somebody is my friend or somebody really cares about me, right? So that person won't hesitate to tell the truth, even if it's right, even if it hurts. And being critical of each other is something that is really important. It's something that's really fundamental, and it helps us improve as individuals, right? Because if I don't have any defects, how can I improve? And I have to recognize those things. So he says that this effort that's made, right? There's this constant effort to seek out and to want people's satisfaction and seeking the praise from them. He says that this requires this is actually what leads to an individual's destruction. And because this leads to an individual's destructions, it's important to figure out a way and to find a way to mediate that and to take care of that and to solve that. So he says that, okay, well, if somebody does say something about me, is it true? Right? This is the first step. The moment that somebody praises me, or the moment somebody says something about me, is this statement true or not? And if we say that it is not true, then what can I tell myself? If someone says to me like, "Man, you're the fastest person ever," right? He's lying. And it's very easy to take that solace at that point. The moment I know something is untrue, I have to recognize and I have to tell myself that this is a lie. And immediately, how should I place the person who has said this about me? That he's wrong, right? Because this person is wrong. Like, what if it's true? What if somebody actually says something about me, he praises me in a way, and that statement is actually true? Then what? Ghazali, he breaks this into two categories. He says, number one, if it's something that is deserving of praise, if somebody speaks about your piety, or somebody speaks about your knowledge, right, or somebody speaks about your worship, and this thing is true, he has one way of dealing with it. He says that if it's something that's worldly, if somebody's praising you because of your wealth, or somebody's praising you because of your status, he said there's another way to deal with this. He said if it's something you're deserving of because of your knowledge or because of your piety, then this should increase you in shukr. This should make you more thankful. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed you with knowledge, or He has blessed you with piety, or He has blessed you with this worship, then that should make you that much more thankful for that. He says, and if it's worldly, right, because if it's status or wealth, he says that this is idiocy, right? if you if you take pride in that, maybe we can get some more chairs. Yeah. So he says that if I'm taking pride in this fact that I have wealth or I have status, he says that this is idiocy. Why? Why is that? Okay. Because these things belong to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Do I essentially have a choice in how much wealth I'm going to receive or how much wealth I have? No. Like fundamentally I don't have that. Right? That is something that is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And even shuhra, even fame, and even status, this is something I personally have no control of. Were there scholars in the past, they never achieved fame. They were never famous. Some of them actually became famous after they died. Like during their lifetime, they're relatively unknown. But after they died, they became very famous. Again, why? Because fame and status is something that is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is not something that a person works for or acquires like knowledge or piety or worship. He says, okay, and he brings a statement here of Mutanabbi. He says, the greatest grief for me in joy is to be sure that it will transition away. That if there is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given me from this world, what what does that mean about that thing? So if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given me wealth, He also can take it away. If He's given me status, He can also remove it. He says, a person who thinks like this is wise. In Mutanabbi, he says that this is the sign of an individual who is wise. So can one rejoice in worldly matters? So if I have wealth or if I have status, is this not something that I can take happiness in? He said you can. He said in limited capacity. He said you should and you can, but it has to be in a limited capacity. And what is that capacity? He says that you take advantage of it in the moment because there's no guarantee on what? How long I'm going to have this. There's no guarantee on how long I will have this wealth. There's no guarantee on how long I will have this status. There are people who rise to stardom, and just as quickly as they rise, they fall. There are people who come into a lot of money, and just as quickly they came into it, they lose it. And he said this fear should always overshadow that joy, meaning that the presence of the joy is fine, but in the back of our minds, in the back of our hearts, we should always have that sense of fear that at any moment, either of these two things or one of these two things can be taken away. He goes on to say, and if somebody does actually rejoice in this, it should be remembered that this is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's favor upon him. Just like those traits that we're deserving. So when we talked about knowledge and piety and worship, those are things that we're deserving and we should rejoice in those. He said, if you do rejoice in worldly things, you need to remember that even those things are from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he says that true pleasure, this comes from realizing completeness. And this is a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and gifts do not deserve praise. They deserve what? They deserve shukr, ahsant. Right? They deserve thanks. A gift is not something that is praised in and of itself. It is something that a person thanks for, and this is why we should always be thankful. So the second reason we said it was the swaying the hearts of others. He says that, okay, well, the reason for that is that love, right? If an individual is driven because they love swaying other people's hearts, he says that this is something that needs to be fought. It needs to be removed. And we had spoken about this in the previous chapter. If I want to stop seeking the praise of others, I need to stop loving that praise. I need to stop seeking it from others. And instead, I should seek it from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what is one way for me to deal with this emotionally, spiritually? He says that the more I seek from others, what happens to my status with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? It decreases. And he says, as long as I keep this in mind, when I start seeking from others, and I keep in mind that this that I'm seeking from others is decreasing my status in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that should create a mechanism where I protect myself from seeking it from that person and returning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he asks, he says, how can I love that which decreases my status with him? And that's what he's saying. He said, like, listen, how is this something that's beloved? If my goal is to draw near to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if my goal is to love him, if my goal is to seek his affection, azza wa jal, how is that possible when I'm doing something that he dislikes? How is it possible when I'm doing something that he hates? Or, another way of looking at it, how is it possible when I'm doing something that distracts me from Allah azza wa jal? So peer pressure, right? This is the last one that we had mentioned and said that this idea or this pressure that we have from others when we're in circles of whether it be clergy or politicians or like people who are famous, we need to understand that it's not necessary that that person is deserving of any of those things, because everything is transient. Everything. There's nothing that will stay in this world. And if we understand that everything is transient, our investing, we shouldn't invest in people, right? We should invest in ourselves and our relationship with Allah Azza wa Jal. So he mentioned some statements. He says that he spoke about the harm of excessive praise. I think we touched on it, and I think we did it in one of the previous chapters. So it said some of the Salaf, they said that whoever rejoices in praise has enabled shaitan to enter his stomach. And I thought that was interesting. Why the stomach? Because you can't get enough, right? Like the stomach is insatiable. Like, and when we think of greed, do we associate greed with the heart? No, where do we usually associate greed with? We usually associate it with the stomach. And others said, if you are told, yes, you are a good man, it should be more beloved to you than being told you are a bad man, for by Allah, you are a bad man, or you're a bad person. And, and that is meant to be as a reminder to us, like who we are and what our status is. And that the more praise that we hear, even if we are good people, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us good people, I mean, we should always try to seek those reminders to put us in our place. Does it mean that we should start becoming insulting? No, right? That's not the intention at all. Like, we should never insult each other. Like, we should always be respectful. But when people speak about me or talk about me, is the mic on in the musalla? Yeah. Yeah, because I thought I heard some background noise, and now it's like, okay, no, I think I think somebody left the mic on. But this should be a reminder to us, like, obviously we shouldn't be insulting to each other, but we should always remind ourselves of our position and our status and who we actually are and where we stand with Allah Azza wa Jal. He mentions a few narrations. So what's interesting is that he starts this. He said, if these narrations are authentic, the first one he brings is actually baseless. So it's not authentic at all. But the ones after that, both of them are in Bukhari and Muslim. Um, so the first one we'll leave. The second one, the Prophet ﷺ, he warned a praiser on another occasion, saying, "Woe to you, you have broken his back. Had he lived, what you said would have led him to success until the day of judgment." Yani, speaking highly of him and speaking and praising him would have broke his back. Right? This is what he ﷺ is basically saying. And he ﷺ also advised against excessive praise, saying, "Do not excessively praise. And if you see those who praise excessively, throw dust in their face," reminding them that, listen, all this praise that you're doing, eventually you're going to end up in, You're going to end up dust, right? You're going to end up in the grave. You're going to be buried one day. So don't invest again in other people in this way by making people's heads big. The companions, radiallahu anhum, they had a unanimous understanding of the great danger of excessive praise in his trials. They were cautious about the immense joy it could bring to the heart. And there are some more statements. So here, one, they bring a statement of Amir al-Mu'mineen. So once a man was asked about something and he responded, "You, Amir al-Mu'mineen, are better than me and more knowledgeable." And the Khalifa, he got angry and he said, "I did not command you to praise me." Similarly, when some of the companions were told the people will remain in goodness as long as Allah keeps you alive, they became upset, and one of them said, "I consider you an Iraqi." Why did he say that? What was going on in Iraq at the time? So it's not modern day Iraq, obviously, right? He's talking about like Kufa, Basra, those areas. That's where all the fitan were coming from, right? That's where all the fitan were coming from. Some of them, when praised, they would supplicate, "Ya Allah, if your servant seeks nearness to you through my praise, I bear witness to his seeking your nearness." So again, this idea of deflecting praise when they felt it was unnecessary, because it was, and it was not needed. Tayyib. Should we praise others? Yes. So what is it that's being warned from? Right, in front of the person seeking it, absolutely. What else? Okay, lying, absolutely. Like, in and of itself is a problem. And excessive praise, right? When we praise someone, it should be fair. It shouldn't be like, "Oh my God, you're the best at this," and like, you just kind of keep going and you keep praising them. Why? Because that might affect his heart. But when we praise someone justly, and not just that, if we praise someone for something that they did or something that they're doing, how does it make the person feel? It makes them feel good, right? And that's something that's really important between Muslim brothers and sisters, right? That we support each other, we make each other feel good. And how do we do that? Part of that respect is recognizing when something is done for each other. And that's why praise is important. And it encourages them to do more. Absolutely. And who does it work really well with? Especially with children. I'm sorry? Sure. hmm So over here, he's not talking about praise, right? He's not saying praise is the problem. He's saying excessive praise is the problem. Like when you do too much, how do you know when it's too much? When it's a lie, right? That's one. What else? Right? Like if they're not deserving of it, what else? I'm sorry. When it's exaggeration, and how do you actually gauge that? How do I know it's too much, or how do I know it's become excessive? I'm sorry. What did you say? I forgot. Remind us. You don't know what you said. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. hmm Yeah. Yeah. So no, I think a very good gauge is my intention, right? I think that's very easy. What is my intention behind praising this individual? I think that's something that's really important, and it helps me determine that my personal gauge is my intention just to make this person feel better. Am I doing this because I want to show appreciation, right? Which is something that's important. I think that's very important. If we benefit from others, one of the things we can do is by praising them because this is our way of appreciating them. And a very easy way to appreciate is telling them. The other way, culturally, right? No, totally. Uh, ahsan. Yeah, they come from Allah Azza wa Jal. Ahsan. Jazakumullah khair. Right? So making sure that to purify my intention that I tie it to Allah Azza wa Jal, that's something that's really important. Making dua for them. That's a very easy way of remembering and tying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala into the reason, right? Because why do we do those things? Number one, because we want to really appreciate it and remember why we're doing it, and we don't want the praise to hurt him, right? That why we when we praise that person, when we make dua, or we say mashallah, or we say Allah yubarak feek, you know what I mean? Like when we make these dua, it's to keep the person grounded and remind him or her that hey, yes, you are deserving of this praise, but ultimately this characteristic you have is from Allah Azza wa Jal. Yeah. Oh, to protect from the evil eye as well. Sah, right? The evil eye is real. It's a real deal. It's a real thing. No. hmm Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Don't do it ever. No. No. Because that's demotivating, right? Right. It's demotivating. Like if if we're working and we're doing things, yes, I should do it lillah, right? I should do it lit taqarrub. I should do it for all these reasons. But every once in a while, if someone tells me, it's like, mashallah, you're doing a good job. uh Yeah, you mentioned good things about them. Mhm. Absolutely, absolutely. And the thing is, like, okay, a person who passed, and someone might be like, okay, well, well, they did some bad things and stuff. Mentioning the bad about people who passed, yes, there might be some people who did some bad things, but how does it benefit me? Right? Like me as an individual, if I speak bad or speak ill about someone who's passed, it's not benefiting me, even if it's true, right? Even if it's true. Oh man, he was such an oppressor, and he was such a bad person, and he did that. Why? Because this religion is not founded upon negativity, and it doesn't breed, and it doesn't harp on negative things. Like we always have to be positive, and we have to focus on positive things. It doesn't mean we deny reality, right? Reality is reality. If someone is a thief, or someone is a liar, or someone's a cheat, should I do business with them? No, right? There's no reason for me to. But should I sit there and I just keep complaining about how much he cheater he is? Right? That's not good for my heart, and it's not good for him. So knowing when to praise and how to praise, this is also culturally dictated, right? Does it make sense, like to see someone walking is like, mashallah, akhi, you walk so well. Like it's an amazing walk and a gait. I like your gait and the way you're moving. Like these aren't things that are going to be culturally under, and not just that. Will he really appreciate it? He'll be like, I didn't. Okay, yeah, I guess I walk well, right? Right, Michael Jackson. Oh, unless that's your moonwalking, right? You're gonna say something, Ahmed? Hmm. Yeah, it could be riba, right? It could be riba, depending on how public the action was, depending on who the person was. Like, it's yeah, it can fall into riba, and that's another problematic issue. So he closes out this chapter talking about that how our hearts should be preoccupied with remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and how every time we do something for other than him, if we do it for other people, this it can all we can all fall into ghafla, right? And fall into this heedlessness where we're not thinking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And how all of these things, all of these characteristics, all of this work, we need to tie it back to him Azza wa Jal, even if we praise or even if we talk about others. In this next chapter, he says, okay, well, if I hate being criticized, there has to be a way to deal with that as well, right? Learning how to deal with the love of praise, that requires one treatment. He says, okay, well, what about hating being criticized? Well, no, that deserves a treatment too, because they stem from the same place. They stem from the same thing. This is just the other side of the coin. Um, he says that a person can be criticized for three conditions, right? Either they were sincere in what they said, or they were sincere but intended harm, or they were lying. So these are the three things when we look at somebody who is criticizing us. Well, I thought I finished this. My apologies. But if we look at someone who's criticizing us, and we deal with someone that's criticizing, it's important to keep in mind that it's very possible that they're sincere, right? It's also very possible that what they're saying is truthful, but it's also possible what they're saying is a lie and it's untrue. And sometimes people intend to hurt us with their criticisms, and sometimes they don't. But we'll spend more time on this next week, inshallah. But somebody does criticize me, and somebody says something to me. Somebody says to me, hey, I think you're a narcissist. What should my job be as a Muslim? What should I do at that point? It's like, you're lying. No, I'm not. I should check myself. And how do I do that? Does it matter what the person's intention was? You understand? So people can have multiple intentions, right? They can intend ill, or they can want this, or they can want that. But my question is, does it matter what that person's intention was? No. What is my job as a Muslim? To, to introspect, right? And to be like, okay, and I need to ask myself a very simple question. Is what this person's saying true about me? And that is the first step towards sincerity. Because we all want to be better. And sometimes criticisms can be in their place, and sometimes they're wrong. Sometimes, like we said, people are lying. But there's no way for me to determine that about myself unless I actually look in myself. But once, if I do ask myself, if somebody says something about me like you're a sexist, okay, I can now ask myself, okay, well, how is it that I feel about women? Do I think women are like this and like this and like this? And we can ask ourselves. And what we can also do is look at our past engagements. Okay, well, when I had to deal with women, how did I deal with them? Or I'm a narcissist. Okay, well, when I deal with people, how do I deal with them? Do I look down on them? Do I help them? Do I not help them? Do I turn away from people? Do I engage? Am I helpful? What are the characteristics of a narcissist? Let me go through the checklist and see if I have them. And someone might be like, "Well, you're gonna do this with every single criticism? What do you guys think?" I'm sorry? Or it's not possible to do it with every single criticism, but what? What should I do at the least? Right, think about them, right? And at least engage them. I don't need to sit with every single one and be like, oh man, which ones should I take the most serious? Right? So I can scale them, right, on a 1 to 10, like which ones are the most destructive, right? Which ones are the most dangerous? Like if someone said to me, um, you have bad eating habits, and another person said to me that you're very arrogant, which one should I probably explore a little bit more? The arrogance, right? So that's important. It's important for us to have our own personal scale on which one is the most destructive in my relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's no doubt about that. Now, is bad eating habits, can that be destructive to my relationship with Yeah, it can. But is it as bad as being arrogant? No. So I have to engage that for sure. That's one way. What's another way for me to figure out which criticism should I engage in? Who is it coming from? If it's somebody who I know is close to me, and somebody who is sincere, and somebody who I know who cares about me, and they tell me like, you really have an arrogant problem. You have an arrogance issue. Should I take that seriously or dismiss it? I should definitely take it seriously. Maybe he's my only friend who's saying that. If I have 10 friends and he's the only one, should I be like, oh no, well, my 9 other friends aren't saying that? No. Even if it's that one, I should still engage. So, scale, from where it's coming from. What else? So, the scale can be two. How destructive it is with my relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and how destructive it is with my relationship with others. And who is it coming from? So I think these are all very good scales, and I think they're all very reasonable means and ways to engage with how to better ourselves, right? Because the only way for us to better ourselves is either through self-recognition or from someone who can help us recognize. Otherwise, it's very difficult, right? It's very difficult to look in the mirror and be like, yeah, you know what? I think I'm really arrogant, right? It's hard. We don't always see it. Or I'm very proud. Or I'm very like, it's like, man, you're such a masochist. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there are things that we hear from other people sometimes. Or sometimes we don't even listen to them. Sometimes we just ignore them, right? People will give us advice or they'll tell us things. Sometimes we won't even listen. But we really need to learn how to sit down with ourselves. We need to learn how to sit down with others. We need to learn how to meaningfully engage, making dua, right? These are all very powerful means and methods for us to better ourselves. So I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us tawfiq. I ask Him Azza wa Jal to allow us to remove this harshness and evilness from our hearts. Ameen. Yes. Mm-hmm. Sure. It can be. Mm-hmm. Sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And the amazing thing is like it's less about the content, it's less about the idea, and it's more about how it's being perceived and how we're responding to it. And which is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, it's a very famous hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says he doesn't look at your ajsad, right? He doesn't look at your bodies, he looks at your hearts. And it's again, it's amazing how he has he's more concerned with how we respond than how tall we are, how short we are, or the color of our skin, where we're from, even if we're male or female. Like those things don't matter. They don't make a difference. All that matters is how we respond, how we internalize, and how we deal with ourselves and how we deal with others. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq. Yes. Hmm. Yeah, yeah. So there's a difference between openly lying and exaggerating, right? So lying would be like, he's the fastest runner on earth, right? That's straight up lying. Is like he's the fastest guy I know, right? You know, it's very different. Or like he's the fastest person I ever met. Again, I think there's grades to exaggeration. Sometimes in excitement we say things, and then there's openly lying. And when do we know when it's lying? When I know it's lying, right? Like many times I know that it's lying, but there are certain things we'll say. It's like, yeah, I'll be with you in a minute. Are you going to sit there with your watch and look to see if it's like 60 seconds have passed? Um, it can become pretty subjective. And again, I think there's a difference between exaggeration and even the extent of the exaggeration, and then just blatantly openly lying. Hmm. Yeah. Call it out. I'd be like, bro, that's not true. It's like you're faster than me, right? So when it comes to that point, it's like openly calling it out. It's a good ego check for us, and it's a good way to set boundaries with others and help them set their own boundaries. And like, hey, listen, okay, yeah, we all exaggerate, but that type of exaggeration is not tolerated. Yes. Yeah. 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 Is it the right way though? Okay, alhamdulillah. As long as it's the right way. Yes. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. So you can say this is good, but you don't mean this tastes good. It's like this gesture was good, right? So I think learning how to play with words is important as well, because we don't want to hurt others, and we also don't want to lie. So right, and we don't want to get stuck eating that food, right? So the thing is, when you have people who are pushy like that, at that point, you have no choice except to be honest, right? It's like, hey, listen, I tried not hurting you, but I just don't like this food. And it's difficult, right? But at that point, there's another characteristic that's being tested, and that's a characteristic of bravery. Like, am I willing to hurt this person now because I'm cornered, right? Not by choice. Like before, when they first give you the food, you have a choice, right? I can tell them like, oh man, this is trash. Like I don't want it, or you're not being dishonest, but you're not cornered at that point. You still have a choice. You can be like, oh man, this looks really good, right? And again, this gesture looks really good, right? And you can mean whatever you want behind it. Um, but sometimes when we're cornered, and now they're like, no, I want to see you eat this in front of me. Like, man, I want to see you enjoy it. And you're like, yeah, I can't enjoy it. Like, I just don't like this food, right? Or like, I don't, I appreciate what you did. You know what I mean? Like, and it's important to, like, a soft landing is important too. Telling them like I appreciate. It's like it's like it's like after seeing this, I feel full. Uh-huh. No, and that's the thing. No, I'm saying ask Allah Subhanahu wa Taala to make us brave, right? That's the most important thing, right? When does bravery show? Bravery shows when we're cornered, right? That's when it shows. It doesn't show when the person in front of us is weaker. That's not bravery. That's actually cowardice. Bravery should be like the moment I'm cornered, I will still speak the truth. That's what true bravery is. And it's in those times where we have to learn to be brave and be like, listen, I really appreciate the gesture, and I was really holding off. I didn't want to hurt your feelings. I really don't like this food. It'll hurt, right? It'll hurt, but this is the difference between kindness and niceness, right? Niceness, like you're willing to lie, or because you don't want to hurt the other person. I would rather the other person be hurt because the truth, it'll sting in the moment, but they might take the food from you, and guess what? Somebody else who enjoys it might be able to take it, or maybe they just don't know how to cook, and they know, what I mean, and they can change up the way that they cook. Like, yeah, they might take it to heart and be like, man, you know what? I'm gonna learn how to cook. Inshallah. I mean, maybe what I mean. Like, not everybody attends the Tazkiya class. You know what I mean? So not everybody can introspect, but at least those here can learn to introspect. Inshallah. Yes. Sure. Yeah, 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 yeah. It's like, oh yeah, you're so patient. Yeah, yeah. Again, it's not upon us to worry about the person's intention, even with the delivery, even if it's not good delivery. How am I dealing with it? It's like, okay, well, this person is trying to imply that I'm impatient. Am I? And all of a sudden, it deflects because it doesn't become about the person. It doesn't come about what they said. It doesn't come about how they say, how can I be better? It can. I mean, I'm not justifying what that person did, but it's always easier for us to control how we respond than it is to control how other people act. And the way for us to respond is spin it in a way, and it's like, okay, this is an opportunity for me to grow. How am I going to grow? Yes. Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. 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 Either. No, well, you have a choice, right? Either be silent. Silence doesn't always mean that you're complicit. That's one way, but some people might be like, oh well, no, you should stand up and go. Hey, I don't know what kind of burden this person has. Like, what if this person is in a job that they need, that they're providing for their family, and their boss keeps talking about Israel, for example. Like, you want to say something, right? You feel like you want to say something, but is it smart? Maybe, maybe not. I because there are two things that'll come into play. Number one, your personal situation. What is my situation, and how much of an effect will this have on not just me, on others if I speak out and I say something? That's important. Secondly, is everybody at the same level of bravery? And it's a very honest question, right? And Islamically, am I required to be at 100 bravery all the time? I'm not. Very story of Yasser and Sumaya and their son Ammar. Yasser and Sumaya, brave. They're like, no, we will never renounce Islam. We'll never renounce Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And what happened? They were killed. Ammar was like, he's like, no, I renounce the religion. He went back to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he's like, he felt bad. He's like, this is what I did. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, Allah knows what's in your heart. But what's the difference between the two? One, yeah, they were rewarded and they saved their life. And what was the reward of the other two? Shuhada. Not to lessen or belittle anyone, you know what I mean? But it's just like, not everybody's going to have the same reaction. Not everybody is going to deal with situations in the same way. Bravery cannot be absolutely expected in every situation because we're not all 100% brave. But listen, if you have the iman and you have that bravery and you have those things, yeah, man. Like, and the reason I say that is because, like, I know my iman is such, for example, and I hope it is, you know, that I can stand up and I have no problem saying anything, and it doesn't matter what the repercussions are. I can deal with them. And there's some people who are like that. But is everyone like that? No. Is that a fair expectation from everyone? Also, no. No. Yeah, that's also true. You know what I mean? You're absolutely right. And sometimes it can have the opposite effect. You can end up hurting yourself and others because you spoke up at the wrong time in the wrong place with the wrong words. Yeah, yeah. I mean, this is what a lot of the intelligence agencies do, right? Like, so Customs, Border Patrol. What do they try to do? They try to incite. They keep poking you, hoping that you'll say something. Does it make sense to be brave at that time? No, not really. It actually what? It actually hurts you. So it's not bravery is one part of it, but intelligence is another part too. Like knowing when to speak and how to speak and like in what way to speak. Yes. Mm. Mm. You should always stand up for yourself. Yeah. So the thing is, my our first initial reaction when someone says that uh, you're you're mean, should I automatically assume about myself that I'm mean? Well, you shouldn't let other people affect you, right? I need to have certain beliefs about myself. And what do we call that? Confidence, right? Like we need to have confidence in ourselves. If somebody just because somebody says something about me, that doesn't mean that it is true. And even when I'm exploring, you know what I'm doing? I'm allowing myself the opportunity to to check. And even if I am mean, Does it mean I'm mean all the time? Right? There might be pockets of meanness, or you know, am I a narcissist? Maybe at times I express that, but it doesn't mean that that's who I am as a whole. So allowing myself to explore is very different than accepting what other people are saying. There's a difference between accepting and accepting the possibility. Does that make sense? Mm, sure. Sure. Or maybe they grew up being criticized, right? Mm-hmm. Sure. So you, it's in, well, we can, right? Allah Subhanahu wa Taala has given us the means for that, and it's about surrounding ourselves with positive people, right? So it's important to connect ourselves with a positive community. It's important to connect ourselves with a positive culture, and when we do that, automatically we'll start building up our own character, and we can now look back at the past in a healthy way because I can process all that trauma, right? That's what it's for, and I can use that as lessons to help build me and help me move forward. Inshallah, see you all next week. Wallahu a'lam wa sallallahu ala khayri khalqin. Nabina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Ameen.